Before we begin today's story, take a moment to subscribe if you enjoy emotionally driven stories that stay with you long after the video ends. These are the kinds of stories that aren't loud or rushed. They quietly settle into your heart. And if you stay until the end, you might find yourself thinking about this one longer than you expect. My name is Emily Turner. I'm 31 years old, and what I'm about to share isn't easy to admit. Some truths don't just change your memories. They change how you see yourself. They make you question whether you ever truly knew who you were. Throughout my 20s, I believed I had life figured out. I married Jason, my college sweetheart. From the outside, everything looked perfect. He was dependable, steady, and kind. Our home was organized, our routines predictable, and our future neatly planned. It was the kind of life people admire. But beneath that calm, something inside me slowly began to wake up. At first, I ignored it. I told myself this was normal, that marriage settles into routine once the excitement fades. Still, during long evenings when Jason was buried in work and our conversations felt distant, I sensed a quiet restlessness growing inside me. A pull toward something deeper, something more alive. That's when Noah came into clearer focus, Jason's closest friend since childhood. He had always been around, but I had never really noticed him this way before. He was the one who brought laughter into the room and handled the things Jason always postponed. Where Jason was careful and structured, Noah was spontaneous and bold. Where Jason followed plans, Noah created moments. There was a natural confidence about him, unforced, effortless. When he spoke, people listened. And when he spoke to me, it felt like the rest of the room faded into the background. It started harmlessly, the way complicated connections often do. He'd stop by to help fix something around the house, and we'd end up talking, really talking. Not about schedules or bills, but about dreams, regrets, and the parts of life we rarely say out loud. With every conversation, I felt pieces of myself returning, parts one hadn't realized I had quietly set aside. Then came a small moment that stayed with me longer than it should have. I handed him a glass of water, and our fingers brushed. It was brief and accidental, but something about it felt unexpectedly powerful. We both paused for half a second too long. I stepped back and told myself it meant nothing. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. After that moment, everything felt slightly different. Not obvious enough for anyone else to notice, but impossible for me to ignore. Conversations carried extra weight. Silences lasted longer. Even ordinary eye contact felt charged with something unspoken. Guilt arrived quietly. It showed up whenever Jason mentioned Noah's name, whenever the three of us sat in the same room, whenever laughter came a little too easily. I kept telling myself I was overthinking it, that a passing feeling only has power if you feed it. But feelings don't disappear just because you deny them. Desire rarely announces itself with noise. It grows in small, private spaces, in shared thoughts, in emotional understanding, in the comfort of being seen too clearly. The turning point came when Jason left town for a short work trip. The house felt unusually quiet. That afternoon, a pipe under the kitchen sink started leaking, and without thinking much about it, I called Noah. He said he'd stop by. Like always, he arrived with easy humor and calm energy. We joked while he worked. It felt normal, almost. But when the repair was done and the tools were set aside, the laughter faded into a silence that didn't feel empty. It felt aware. We stood there, only a few steps apart, neither of us rushing to fill the quiet. There was no dramatic move, no reckless action, just a long pause where both of us understood something without saying it. A line had come into view, and for a dangerous second, neither of us pretended not to see it. My heart was racing, not from what happened, but from what almost did. After he left, the house felt different. I sat alone for a long time, replaying every word, every glance, every signal I might have imagined, or might not have. That night, I barely slept, because the truth was no longer hiding. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was conflict. The days that followed felt heavier than they should have. Nothing had happened, not really, yet everything inside me felt unsettled. I moved through my routine carefully, like someone trying not to make noise in a fragile room. Jason called each night from his trip, warm and trusting as always. I answered with the same steady voice I'd used for years. But after each call ended, I sat there staring at the dark screen, wondering when honesty had started feeling so complicated. I avoided texting Noah, avoided even thinking his name. But avoidance has a strange side effect. It makes everything louder inside your head. When Jason returned, life seemed to snap back into its familiar shape. Dinners together. Small talk about work. Weekend plans. From the outside, nothing had changed. From the inside, everything had. I started noticing the distance in my marriage more clearly. Not because Jason had changed, but because I had started asking questions I'd buried for years. When did comfort quietly replace connection? When did stability become silence? One evening, the three of us ended up in the same room again. A simple visit. Casual conversation. Safe topics. But awareness sat between us like a fourth presence. Brief glances. Careful timing. Too much restraint where ease used to be. And that's when I understood the truth I had been trying to outrun. This wasn't about Noah alone. It was about the parts of myself I had ignored for too long. The need to feel heard, seen, emotionally alive. Temptation is often misunderstood. It isn't always about another person. Sometimes it's about the version of yourself you almost forgot existed. I don't know what choice I'll make next. I only know that pretending nothing changed is no longer an option. Because once your heart wakes up, it refuses to go back to sleep. And sooner or later, every hidden feeling asks to be answered. The silence stretched longer than it should have. Not awkward, just full. Like a moment waiting to become something more if either of us took one step too far. He gave a small nod, said the sink should be fine now, and reached for his jacket. The spell broke in the most ordinary way possible. A simple goodbye. A door closing. Footsteps fading down the porch. But ordinary endings can still leave extraordinary echoes. That night, I tried to return to my normal rhythm. Cooking, cleaning, answering messages. But my thoughts kept circling the same question. When does emotional closeness become a boundary crossed? Jason came home 2 days later, smiling, tired, grateful to be back. He hugged me the way he always did. Familiar, safe, unchanged. And for a moment, I held on tighter than usual, not out of romance, but out of fear. Fear of what distance can quietly grow without anyone noticing. I started making small corrections in my behavior. Shorter replies. Less eye contact. Fewer chances for private conversation. If Noah visited, I kept things polite and brief. Controlled. Appropriate. He seemed to understand. He kept the same respectful distance. But restraint has weight. You can feel it in the room. One evening, Jason thanked both of us, me for always being steady, and Noah for always showing up. The words were simple, but they landed heavily. Trust, spoken out loud, has a way of sharpening your conscience. That was the moment I realized something clearly. Some choices aren't about what you want in the moment. They're about who you want to be when the moment passes. And my real conflict was no longer between two people. It was between impulse and integrity. I told myself distance would solve everything. That clarity would return if I simply stayed disciplined long enough. For a few days, it almost worked. Routine rebuilt its walls. Emotions quieted to a manageable whisper. Then the message came. Not inappropriate. Not suggestive. Just simple. Asterisk. Jason asked if I could drop off the documents he forgot. I'll leave them at the door. Asterisk. It should have been harmless. And technically, it was. But my pulse still quickened when I read it. Not because of him, but because of what I knew was unresolved inside me. He arrived, handed over the folder, and didn't step inside. We exchanged a few careful words, the kind strangers use, polite, measured, safe. Yet underneath that politeness was mutual awareness. We were both choosing restraint on purpose. After he left, relief mixed with something unexpected. Respect. For the first time, the pull didn't feel romantic or dangerous. It felt instructive. Like a mirror showing me where my emotional life had gone quiet. And where it needed honesty, not escape. That night, instead of avoiding the distance between Jason and me, I faced it. We talked, really talked, longer than we had in months. Not about chores or schedules, but about stress, disconnection, and the ways routine had slowly replaced presence. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No confessions. Just truth spoken calmly in a dimly lit room. And sometimes, calm truth is more powerful than emotional chaos. I don't know what happens next with certainty, but I know this much now. Temptation didn't enter my life to ruin it. It entered to wake it.